Hello, Ben Lister here again. Episode 38 of the reaelx podcast. Today's guest is going to be Jeffrey Dorset, chatting a lot about his career, so here it is, episode 38. Enjoy and be hello, and that's a wrap. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Chatbox podcast. It's episode 38 of the Chatbox podcast here today. How are you doing today? Right, let's crack on. As you know, each week I have a guest to talk about their career or their job, so let's crack on with this week's guest. It's broadcaster Jeff Dorset. Hello, Jeff. Welcome along. How are you today?
Pretty good. As my friend Roscoe would always say, I'm happy as a rooster in a hen house.
That's good. 5 questions today about your broadcast career for you, if that's okay.
Absolutely no problem. You carry on, hit the button.
You ready to rumble in the jungle?
Well, yeah, if I was Muhammad Ali fighting against Joe Frazier, I certainly would be rumbling in the jungle.
All right, then let's go for it. Question 1. Where did you start your broadcast career?
Yeah, well, the broadcast career, first gig I did was a celebration week in Sheffield, where we went on air with the launch program team at Radio Hallam in Sheffield. It was in April of 1974. I can remember exactly the first 4 records I played. I got an album through the post called Smiler, which was by Rod Stewart, and I opened the show with Sweet Little Rock and Roller. I then went on to Queen and Killer Queen, and then followed that with Barry White and You're My First, My Everything. That was really how we kicked it. Oh, and then the Drifters were the next one with like Sister and Brother. So those were the first 4 songs I played, all very different, but it was a huge time in Sheffield. The station was run by Keith Skews. It was the 6th station to launch in commercial radio in the UK, following on from Capital and LBC and others. And it was just a great time, and everybody in Sheffield was ready for it. They had BBC Radio Sheffield, which was a little bit middle of the road, and we came along there and really rocked them sideways with Johnny Moran, Colin Slade, Ray Stewart, and other guys that were around in April of 1974.
Wow, what a start to your career.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Question 2. Who were your inspirations in broadcasting growing up?
Right, well, it's a mixed bag, Ben. First of all, without any shadow of a doubt, one of the greatest voices I ever heard was nothing to do with music whatsoever. It was a fellow called Alistair Cook, and he was a gentleman who was still recording when he was in his 80s, and he was on Radio 4 once a week with a program called Letter from America. And this man was an authority, whether it be politics, money, the weather, sports, or music. He was just a wonderful, wonderful voice. And as I said, he did that for many, many years. I forget how many, but an awfully long time. But if we're talking about music radio, of course, pirate radio really was a big thing for me. I mean, it was rocking the waters as it was there with Big L, Radio London, and Radio Caroline. And off those ships came a number of guys who were my inspirations. In no particular order, Dave Cash. Now, Dave Cash was different to most other guys. He came from Canada to work on Big L, Radio London, but he was very different to everybody else in that he used to be writing commercials and jingles, but he really knew how to move a link and turn a tune, and he was very good. And he also had a great radio voice. He went on to Capital in 1973 and did Cash on Delivery, and he was one of the centerpieces there. So Dave Cash is one. The next guys are sort of connected a little bit. American Forces Network, which went all over the world for the troops from the States, had a guy on there with the greatest jive slang you've ever heard called Wolfman Jack. Now, this guy, he was also in the film American Graffiti, but he was the one that inspired Roscoe. Roscoe openly would admit that Wolfman Jack would come up with all these phrases, you know, going to cause my back to crack, my knees to freeze, my vertebrae to sway, and my liver to quiver. here comes James Brown and his famous Flames. And this is the way that Roscoe sort of did things. So those two guys were great for me. Roscoe still got it, still out there, still doing things. Johnny Walker was different to a lot of people. He was a music jock, really into music in a big way. Radio Caroline was his bag. And then, of course, Radio 1 after that. I like Johnny. I met Johnny. I know all about him. And he's a great, great guy, super voice and cheeky as it can be. And he has something that a lot of people don't have. He's well in his 70s, just like Tony Blackburn. He's well in his 70s, but he sounds like he's 50 or younger. And that is a real skill to be able to do that, because there are a lot of people sound their age. A lot of people sound older than they are. Very few people sound younger than they are. And Johnny Walker has that. But if I wanted to pick out one particular person amongst all of those, and those guys are my inspirations, there was a fellow that worked for Capital Radio in the middle to late 70s and into the 80s. His name was Roger Scott. Wonderful voice, but also into the music in a big way. He was the first person ever to play Bruce Springsteen in this country. And nobody knew of Bruce Springsteen. And he announced that Bruce was going to do a gig somewhere. And through Roger's power of the airwaves, it sold out. And nobody knew who Bruce Springsteen was. He also got Bob Marley and the Wailers big time on radio. Nobody was playing reggae like that. And so Roger Scott tragically passed away a good few years ago now. Great voice, very authoritative, and Capital's cruising was always a really big thing for him. Love Roger Scott, and he's probably my all-time favorite.
Yeah, as you say, also there's the people like Chris Tarrant, Neil Fox as well in the old Capital.
Wonderful. You talk about Chris Tarrant. You know, the story goes with Chris, of course, he moved over from Tiswas and he went into Capital Radio. He was doing a show, I think it was on Saturday lunchtime or something. And Chris just said, I'm not going to be in the studio. I'm going to be downstairs in the foyer at Capital. And they thought, you're nuts. What's he doing down there? So he went down there and he was just talking to people and playing a bit of music as well. Great stuff as well. Got a lot of admiration for Chris in everything that he does. And of course, it showed later on when they moved over and did, you know, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Dr. Fox, Neil Fox, what a jingle he has. I mean, those two guys had two of the best radio jingles of all time. I mean, Dr. Fox with, you know, Bad Case of Loving You from Robert Palmer. Doctor, doctor, you know, it's just a great, great jingle, which he uses all the time, even today. And Chris Tarrant had one, which was absolutely fantastic, which had the words that you could hear Tarrant in the afternoon or Tarrant on the traffic or whatever it was. And it was just absolutely fantastic that they would have all these great jingles that they could do. Fast moving. Capital, when they were there, was wonderful. I mean, Pat Sharp was on there as well. Pat and Mick were on there. John Sachs was there or thereabouts at the time, Richard Allinson. And Capital was really a mover and shaker at that time. So got great admiration for those two guys.
And you forgot about as well at Capital and Tony Blackburn.
Yeah, well, Tony, of course, spent some time at Capital Gold. He wasn't on Capital as such. He was on what they call Capital Gold. I've got a lot of admiration for Tony. I mean, he's 78 years of age. He's got all the energy in the world. He's not what I call a content jock, in that he doesn't spend a lot of time over the music itself because he doesn't put a lot of content in there. But what he does do is he plays a lot of hits fast. And of course, he's got these wonderful Pam's jingles from Dallas in Texas, which he wangs in there all the time in between the songs. And it makes it a fast moving show. I mean, if you want to be a little bit critical, Tony, of course, took over from the great Brian Matthew with Sounds of the 60s. Brian was a totally different animal. He would be telling you stories, people he's met, how he handled things, the background to a song. And that's the way it was. Tony does it differently and does it very successfully. And I've been very fortunate, Ben, to have his producer, Phil the Doctor, or Phil the Collector Swern, on my show and on my radio show. And Phil's a great guy. I mean, currently, he produces Paul Gambaccini and Tony's shows, The Golden Hour and Sounds of the 60s. But people might not be aware who Phil Swern is. He is the guy that devised the quiz called Popmaster, which is what Ken Bruce does every day. And this, when they sat down to have lunch about Popmaster, Phil Swern said, well, it's good for 6 months, I think, Ken. Do you know, it is the biggest spike of any listenership anywhere in Europe. That 20 minutes between 10:30 and 10:55 or there or thereabouts every day has the biggest listener audience anywhere in Europe. It's incredible. Everybody, lorry drivers stop their trucks, painters and decorators stop working, people up a ladder stop, all to listen to Popmaster. And Phil Swern said in all the years he's worked with Tony, they've never had one crossword.
Wow. Wow. Paul Gambaccini now works for the Greatest Hits, I think.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he does things that the BBC had him doing, of course, America's charts, America's hits. And then they took it off him and put him on to the Pick of the Pops, which he does on a Saturday lunchtime. And he's always loved this great American music and the charts of American music. So that's what he does now on Greatest Hits Radio.
Is he still on the BBC?
Yes, he is. Saturday afternoons, 1 till 3, Radio 2, Paul Gambaccini is on there. I met Paul Gambaccini at a launch party, what would that be, 4 years ago now, and a great chat with him about a lot of things. We chewed the fat over certain things. If ever, Ben, you were running a music quiz, invite him. He and Mike Reed collectively are just the encyclopedia of music. And if you wanted to win a pop quiz with Mike Reed and Paul Gambaccini, they would win you the quiz hands down because their knowledge of music.
The heritage chart.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they do. Mike Reed does that. Yeah, heritage chart.
But he does it network now because he's no longer a nation person.
Yeah, that's right. He does it. He did it out of Downforce Radio, which is like a Formula One, but they have music on it as well. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I spent time with Mike. We did an outside broadcast together at Portsmouth Guildhall, and yeah, we had a long chat and coffee, and he was chatting about what he does and his career. And of course, you know, when you think back to Swap Shop and Superstore and Pop Quiz, great guy when it comes to quizzes. Love his music taste.
Yeah, like I say, I never knew Paul Gambaccini still worked for the BBC.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, still there.
Because I was going to, I'm hoping to get him to do one of these.
Well, why not? I mean, you'd have a really good time, I'm sure, Ben.
I've had Bruno.
Yep, I know that. Seen that. I saw the list of people you've had on. So, yeah, Bruno's a good guy. He's got his company. What's it called? Imma Media or something like that it's called.
I'm not sure if he's retired from that role now.
Might have done. But, yeah, very talented individual.
Yeah, because one of my friends used to work with him on the Sky channel.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because he broke records, Bruno did.
Mm-hmm. All right. Good man.
And I think there was a bit of controversy with a song. I'm not sure. I think it was Killing in the Name of.
Okay. Right. Okay.
That I read.
Don't know the story. Yeah, I don't know the story.
What question are we up to again? Sorry.
We're on to number 3.
Question 3. What is your favourite part about the job?
First of all, it's putting together playlists. I'm a music jock, Ben. So therefore, every time I put a show together, and this is what I do now, is that I've got a 60s show, a 70s show, and an 80s show, which are heard on 94 radio stations in 24 countries. In those shows, I will put in clips of interviews that I've done, and I love doing interviews. I mean, as I said to you, I've done 2,850 interviews. I've done interviews from everybody from Fleetwood Mac to the Rolling Stones, Eagles to Toto, Sir Cliff Richard, along to every 60s act I can possibly think of, 70s with Slade and Sweet and Susie Quattro and Mud and Racy. into the 80s with Rick Astley, Go West, an assortment of other people, loads of 80s acts as well.
U2.
And sorry, not done U2, no, but plenty of others have been along the way. So that's really what I enjoy most of all, is doing those interviews. I talked to the guy from D-Ream last week, which was really good. And that's Peter Kuna. And I talked to, who are we talking to recently? Let's see. Right Said Fred have been on. Ricky Ross of Deacon Blue has been on. The guys from Kiss have been on. And yeah, so I've been very, very lucky. And of course, it's been an interesting time. But if you ask me what else I enjoy with the job, it's finding what I call ones that got away. So finding songs, Ben, that perhaps don't get the airwaves. They might be turntable hits, but in fact, they never charted, or they were just out maybe in the 50 to 75 on a UK chart. So you don't get them played that often, and people say, well, I didn't know he did that, or wow, that's a good song. Why doesn't it get played more often? So it's the content that's important to me, and also perfecting, even now, after all these years, slick content. So between tracks, don't bore people to death like you're an anorak, but make sure that you put in something that's interesting, that makes people's ears prick back and they think, wow, he knows about me, or he knows about that particular single. You know, when you're interviewing people these days, they don't want to hear the same old questions about, you know, what color do you like? What's your favorite hit? You know, how did you do this? I mean, you know, like if I was interviewing Steve Harley of Cockney Rebel, the last thing I'd talk about is Make Me Smile, Come Up and See Me Sometime, because he has it from everybody. You want to talk about Judy Teen or Here Comes the Sun or Sebastian. So that's the kind of thing that you want to do. I mean, only about 3 weeks ago, Ben, I was talking to Eddie Grant at his home in Barbados. Now, you know, Eddie Grant, I thought I'd start off with something unusual that's going to make him stare and think, oh, wow. And so I just sort of said to him, do you know, Eddie, you and I are blood brothers. And he said, how's that? I said, well, you had a hit in the 80s called Electric Avenue. And I was brought up in Brixton, which is only 100 yards from where Electric Avenue is. And that made him laugh. And he's thinking, wow, you know, he's done a bit of research on me. So those are the kind of things that are very important.
And also as well, there was when you said about the Rolling Stones, something popped into my head, like Alistair Stewart, the newscaster. You might have heard of him.
Of course, absolutely.
He's close friends with Ronnie Woods.
Yeah.
And he said Ronnie, because they were doing James Whale's thing where James Whale went very well, I don't think, last year.
Oh, I see. Something. Yeah. Okay.
And he said Ronnie Wood's wife, Sally, is it? Or
yeah, that's it. It's Sally. Yeah.
She apparently, I think she invited, after he got cured of his illness, I think, Alistair Stewart said it on one of the archive shows, that she invited all the doctors and nurses who helped him through the treatment out for dinner.
Right.
Yeah. Just to say thank you.
Yeah, well, they're good guys. I mean, to give you an idea, Ben, I saw the Rolling Stones in a very small venue holding maybe, I don't know, a couple of hundred people. In 1964, I saw the Rolling Stones, and Rolling Stones had 3 guitarists, Mick on vocals and Charlie on drums. And when I saw them again in 2016 at St Mary's Stadium in Southampton, 33,100 people. They didn't just have 3 guitars and a drum and a vocal. They had 4 guitars, a brass section of 8. They had 3 backing singers, 2 keyboards and 2 drummers. And they were phenomenal. Absolutely. You could hear every single word that Mick sang. Unbelievable. The energy of that guy. He's got a 28-inch waist. He's in his 70s and he's running up and down the catwalk like he's, 18. Unbelievable. And the best show I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, and also his daughter's stepdad through has Rupert Murdoch as a stepdad.
Sure, that's right. Absolutely, of course. Yeah, through Jerry Hall.
Yeah, because Mick Jagger, she has a rocker of a dad and a
Yes,
is it
model.
billionaire?
Of course he is.
Billionaire of a stepdad.
Of course he is. Absolutely, definitely. Over the years, you've been going since that length of time. All those gigs that they do, I mean, absolutely huge. So yeah. Sorry, Ben, carry on.
I wonder who'd win in a battle of. I think Mick Jagger would win in a fight out of them two. Rupert Murdoch and Mick Jagger.
Well, obviously, because he's got the slight age advantage, and Murdoch isn't the fittest guy imaginable. But you talk about parts of the job, Ben, that really I enjoy. Another one is comparing or visiting and going to gigs. Now, I've been very, very fortunate because one of my best friends is the keyboard player for Queen. Now, he's been with Queen since 1984. So he was with them when they did Live Aid. And he invited my wife and myself to 2 gigs they did in Las Vegas. One of them was to the T-Mobile in Vegas, which holds 33,000 people. And there were only 12 in the green room afterwards with the band, and we were 2 of them. And so that was one gig that we went to. The second one, they were doing a residency at the Palms, and that only holds 5,000 people, but they were there for 14 nights over a month. That only hold 5,000 people. But I was at that one as well, because Queen is something else. I mean, a lot of people criticize the fact that Adam Lambert would not be Freddie Mercury. And of course, he isn't, and he never admits to being it. But this guy's got style. This guy looks great. And of course, it's turned for Queen because you've got, first of all, they have a double whammy going on in that a new crowd has come and wants to see them because of the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. The second thing is Adam Lambert brings them a younger crowd. And for him, it's a big plus because he's getting round the world that he would never have gone to places in maybe Australia or the Far East because of the popularity of Queen. And recently, when I've been talking to their bass player, Neil Fairclough, he was saying that it's trying to fit everything in because, of course, of the pandemic, they've had 18 months worth of gigs cancelled. So they've got all these gigs they've got to start doing the moment things open up, because they've got to do a Far Eastern Australian tour. They've got to come to the UK because there was a tour that got postponed. And that's the next one I think they're going to do. And then it will be back to America or South America. I mean, these guys, if Brian and Roger are both in their 70s, still want to keep touring, then they have got 365 days a year could be occupied if they want to do that. And I met Brian and I met Roger and spent time with them in the green room in Las Vegas. So I was really happy with them.
Yeah, brilliant. And also you talk about as well lots of different things. Now it's on to question 4. How has COVID affected your life and line of work?
Right. Well, first and foremost, of course, like so many people, I'm now doing everything from home. I heard on your podcast you did with Dr. Fox, Neil was saying he does everything from home now. And
he does it from his shed in Fulham.
Yeah, he said, didn't he? A shed. Yeah, wonderful. That's how David Hamilton does it. He does a shed at the bottom of the garden. And yeah, it's really funny. But I'm actually got a custom built studio here, which I'm talking to you from now. And
are you far from the capital?
No, I'm a fair old way. I'm in Salisbury, so it's a 2-hour drive into London. But I'm working with a home studio, so I do all my shows from here in the home studio, which is different. Whether I'll go back to a studio, because I have 2 places I could go back to if I wanted to. Express FM in Portsmouth, where we do a show called the Soft Rock Show, where I'm here. My producer is in Burton Bradstock, which is a 2-hour drive away, and we connect over WhatsApp and do the show. And that's how we do it. And we have a great time when we put it all together. We're 3 times award winners with this particular show, Soft Rock Show, where we play lots of new music, about 7 tracks, and then we play a lot of retro tracks as well, and just have a banter, because he's actually a label owner, a producer, and a manager. So he's a different animal to me. I'm the music jock who
What's his
turns the
name?
tunes. Adrian Collis. So let's give him a name check. Hi, Adrian. He's my man, and he's my guy that does my social media, and he's really the best of friends, and he's great at what he does, and he's been to a lot of gigs over time. So that's how it's changed a bit, doing work from home. But there has been an upside for me, Ben, in the pandemic, and that is interviews. You see, there was a time when I would do an interview or try for an interview with somebody, and I get the response back, well, he can't really do it this week, Geoff, because they're remixing the album, or he can't do it next week, Geoff, because they're actually rehearsing to go out on tour. Now, when I ring them up, it's like, when do you want to do it? Because these artists have not been touring. They're going stir crazy at home, and they want to talk to somebody, and I'm willing to talk to them. So that's why the interview list has been longer and longer and longer during the pandemic. I mean, hang on one second. I'll just give you an idea. Let's see what I've got here. Just people that I talked to during the pandemic. Ace Frehley from Kiss, Chesney Hawkes, Duke Fakir of the Four Tops, Chris Difford from Squeeze, Ian Donaldson from H2O, Joey Mollen from Badfinger, Marty Christian from the New Seekers, Nick Kershaw, Owen Paul, Peter Asher, Gary Fletcher, Jim Petterick from Survivor, as in Eye of the Tiger, John York from the Byrds, Simon Kirk from Bad Company, John Russell from the Glitter Band, Richard Easter, who was the producer of Steve Wright in the Afternoon, Susie Quattro's been on, Right Said Fred have been on, Philip Wright from Vanity Fair, Paul Carrick, Patrick Olive from the Hot Chocolate Boys, Marilyn has been on, Supertramp have been on, Asia have been on, Frank Allen of the Searchers, Don McLean, as in American Pie, and Bev Bevan from The Move and ELO. And that's just a couple.
Brilliant. And yeah, as we move on to our last question, thanks for that big list. And did you have you ever had Phil Collins or Philip Bailey on your interview?
No, they've not been on, but I've had the Genesis boys on in Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks.
Did they mention Phil Collins?
Of course they did. Yeah, because they've actually got tours planned, which they had to postpone, of course. But because Phil, as you know, is not so well. I mean, you know, he's hobbling around.
Apparently, a colleague of mine told me, someone on this podcast said he's got a bit of arthritis.
Well, not only that, but he's got a back issue as well. And the arthritis in his hands, he can't play the drums now. So what they do is when they play, his son plays drums. But Phil's still got the voice, he's still got the chops, and he can do that. But yeah, they're happy to reform for some Genesis gigs. You know, there's always anniversaries coming up, and they will sell out in no time at all. Tickets are very expensive, I might add, but that's the price of seeing your stars.
Yeah, have you and also it's good that Phil Collins is still around, like Phil Collins.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. We want. I mean, we've lost a few people over the last few years, and that's tragic. Yeah, of course. Yeah, Michael Jackson, Prince. You know, I mean, some of these guys died far too young.
One of my favourite songs is Prince, Purple Rain.
It is good song. Did you see the movie?
No, I've seen the video.
Okay, well that's a start. Yeah, but Prince has made some wonderful songs. I mean, my personal favourites, 1999 and Little Red Corvette, are absolutely brilliant. But so many of his songs are Where Doves Cry. What a song. So yeah, Prince, huge talent. People forget how good he is at dancing. I know he learned that off James Brown, but in fact, he's a fantastic guitar player. Very underrated as a guitar player is Prince.
Nice. Right, last question on the list. What advice would you give to young aspiring broadcasters who are starting out?
Well, it's been a long journey for me, Ben. So let me just try and tell you what I would do. We've been fortunate enough ourselves to win several awards. But if I was starting out as a young aspiring broadcaster, the first thing I would do is probably do some work at your local hospital radio. I think that you could learn, you can make mistakes because, you know, it's only a small audience, but learn your trade in being able to put links together and introduce tunes, not to talk and crash the intro, but hospital radio is probably my first start to them. My second piece of advice is go to your local community radio station. Giving back something to the community is ideal. And start at the bottom. Go in there and tell them that you want to learn all the trade. You want to learn about things. Even if you're making the coffee and the tea and you are getting involved in perhaps doing some local information, which community radio always does. It creates, where there are fetes and festivals and charities going on, they want people in there to produce their local news. And just graduate up there. No doubt the stations will probably have 2 studios, and see if they'll let you into the second studio to practice your skills and learn your trade, learn your music, because you've got to remember these days, Ben, that very few people on any radio station, commercial or BBC, gets to pick their own tunes. Normally they're picked by a computer and you have to live with it. And that has been one of my failings in the past, that I won't agree to go anywhere where I don't pick the music, which restricts me in certain areas. But I cannot sit in front of a screen and see songs coming up that I've got to play that I personally don't like and don't reflect me. Now, that maybe sounds big-headed, but at the end of it, I only want to play what I think is good radio tunes. And it's worked for me. I wouldn't have won awards without it. But for the aspiring people, give your services to the local community radio station. Offer to do any shifts that they've got available. And whatever you do, be reliable. If you say you're going to be in there at 9 o'clock in the morning, don't turn up at 9:30 just because it's a community radio station. Do that. And finally, we live in a world of networking. We are blessed now with social media. Thank goodness for the internet. And what you should be doing there is get involved on Facebook, on Twitter, on various other ways, Instagram, and get on there and meet other people, like people who are also in radio. Try and see, a lot of these guys on Facebook, radio presenters, are willing to be your Facebook friend. And you could learn a bit about the way that they work as well. And look at your inspirations. Look at somebody who perhaps in your local area, it will be difficult because of the recent takeover by Bauer, which put 169 DJs out of business, and also 39 radio stations were swallowed up, including ones up where you are, Ben, and became greatest hits radio. And the problem with that is
hits radio.
Or hits radio. But the problem is they're not in your town, because what they're doing is they're networking it out of London. And the problem
or Manchester.
Or Manchester, but they're not necessarily in Hull. They're not necessarily in Salisbury, where I am. And so it's not like you could have done in the old days, where you could have gone in to your local radio station, Viking up there where you are, and perhaps somebody said, oh, well, you can sit in the studio and watch this guy work and see how he operates, because a lot of people are very nice. Now, that's where you've got a problem today with commercial radio. Maybe your BBC local radio will also give you an opportunity, but just look for chances to meet people and soak up the opportunity like a sponge. Go with people, learn about them, learn how they first started, and whatever you do, do the job that you're given to the best of your ability, but put yourself about and start that way. And when you've started with networking, community radio and hospital, is start to think about putting yourself a 4-minute demo together, not a 1-hour show, a 4-minute demo with basically your links, and all they want to hear is your voice. They don't want to hear the songs. They know those songs you're going to be playing, but they want to know how you introduce them and how you back announce them if you do. But at the end of it, you want to get a demo. You want to also put yourself together a nice CV, just like you're going for any job, and put that together with some photos, some social media, and all of that. Put yourself about so people have heard of you. And then what you've got to do is, when you think you're ready, and somebody, maybe you get a mentor, maybe at community radio, you find yourself a really nice guy who's prepared to mentor you and help you through and give you advice. And the best thing to do, you're blessed with a mouth and 2 ears. So use those in that proportion, that you pay attention to what people tell you. Listen carefully and pay attention. Get that demo together. and then be ready to send it to some people. And there are a lot of internet radio stations around, some good, some not so good. But at the end of the day, we are driven by the internet. So if you can't get on BBC local radio, or you find it difficult with commercial radio because the slots are going to be few and far between, but maybe build your way up there through the ranks there. Internet radio stations. I mean, as I told you, Ben, I'm on 94 stations in 24 countries. A lot of these are internet stations. Some are commercial, some are community, up and down this country, but also abroad, America, Australia. I mean, where am I? Thailand, all sorts of different countries where my shows are heard. But you produce a good demo, a slick demo that somebody's proud of. And if your mentor is there with you, ask them what they think of the demo. And they might say, I'd adjust that a little bit, do this a little bit. And you'll find yourself an opportunity. That's my advice.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining us, Geoff.
No problem.
Do join me again soon for another Chatbox podcast. But for now, please give it up for Geoff Dorset.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time and good luck, whatever you do.
Do join me again soon for another podcast. But thank you for watching and listening. Thank you very much. And that's a wrap.
That was my interview with Geoffrey Dorset. Hope it filled a gap in your time. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you liked it. Hope you'll subscribe. So, yeah, that's it from me. Episode 38. Join me for episode 39 very soon with special guest Sean Tilley. So join me then. BL out, and that's a wrap.